Hello and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Paton on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. Heading into round 12, the first week of the mid-season buys, and it's a bit of a rookie special edition with the mid-season draft coming up tonight as we record, and plenty of cheapies on the horizon, which we definitely need in SuperCoach at the moment. But I'm Al Paton, your host again this week. Joining me on the couch, Chloe Williams. Welcome back, Chloe.
Happy to be back. I think this week I might be bringing some donuts in tow, though, with the buys, but hopefully not after all of your great advice today.
Oh, yeah, there's something to live up to. And from up the highway, we've got him in from Geelong, Dan Batten from the Geelong Advertiser, of course, one of our rookie experts who's all over the mid-season draft. So no pressure at all, Dan, but you're going to give us some saviours in SuperCoach this week.
Good to be here and good to be in this schmick new studio, a bit better than the hot box that we were in previously. So looking forward to it, and hopefully some 99.9k goodies for us soon.
Yeah, excellent. We love having those in SuperCoach again this year. Of course, a reminder, like, subscribe, leave a review. We love your feedback anywhere you listen to the podcast. Of course, watching on the Code Sports YouTube channel. And don't forget, there is a great offer at the moment, $1 for the first month for Code Sports. Includes SuperCoach Plus. You buy, just absolutely crucial over the buys. It's got the buy planner there, which will tell you straight away how many players you've got available or missing over the buys, which, as Chloe can tell us, can be a bit terrifying, but it is important information. Plus, of course, all your break-evens, price projections, which, when we're planning out our trades over the next few weeks, all those things absolutely crucial. But every SuperCoach knows managing injuries is the key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team, and some big names again, unfortunately, on the list this week. Of course, Essendon's just absolutely copped it. Zach Reid, probably the cash cow of the year, did a hamstring again. Unfortunately, he was on for another big score, but he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. So someone I think a lot of people will be trading this week in SuperCoach. And poor old Saad El Hawley, a lot of us brought him in last week, then he was dropped to the VFL, and he actually did a hamstring as well in the VFL, and he's out for 4 to 6 weeks as well. So shocking luck for him. And the Bombers also have Ben Mackay and Kyle Langford out. So there'll be some changes there, and the mid-season draft I think will come into play, which we'll get to shortly with Dan. And quick some news from Tigerland as well. Sam Lawler, been fantastic. Did a hamstring 4 to 6 weeks, so he's out for a while. And Josh Smiley, who we're hoping to see sometime in the second half of the year, but he's 6 to 8 weeks away now on the Richmond injury list, also with a hamstring. So yeah, the top 2 draft picks, we won't be seeing them for a while.
Yeah, lots of hamstrings, but it was a shoulder that sidelined the popular rookie trade in last week, Cooper Simpson. So that was 10 weeks. He's just had surgery.
He lasted about 2 minutes in that game after 53,000 SuperCoaches brought him in. Just, an absolute curse that's been this year.
Yeah, he was primed for that role too, though, so it is very disappointing both for him and for SuperCoaches. Callum Mills as well, not an injury, but a suspension for the one game. He did just return and scored a 69 this week, but passed the eye test, I would say personally. But yeah, he will be missing one game, so can't bring him in this week. And then Sean Darcy, also a test with his knee injury, so we could see him return too.
And then we go back down the highway. Bailey Smith obviously said he post-game that he had 4 pain-killing injections in his shin, and said he probably wouldn't have played if it wasn't against his former side, the Western Bulldogs. He wasn't on the injury list this week, which is a good sign, and training, he completed drills as normal, but he was jogging at half pace during the sprint work. It could be just a management thing, but we know Tom Stewart wasn't on the injury list a few weeks ago, and then 2 days later he was out. So I think it's a bit of a watch on him.
Geelong's not the sort of team that would rest someone.
Never.
At this time of year, is it?
Never. But, he's in such good form. They won't take it lightly, but at the same time, they have managed their veterans in the past. He's not a veteran in this case, but one of their better players. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of a watch there on him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wrap on this week's Injury Report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. A couple of quick segments to get through before we get into your questions, and there are plenty of those. Thanks to everybody who wrote in. Quickly, obviously, a reminder that the mid-season buys go for the next 5 weeks. We do have best 18 scoring, so you only need to get 2 18 this week available players, but that's not necessarily going to be straightforward for everybody. Chloe, turning to you there. With the teams missing this week, Carlton, North Melbourne, the Bulldogs and Port Adelaide. So the AFL did us a little bit of a favour this year, I think, by, even though we've got an extra week of buys, only the 4 teams missing rather than 6 that we've had in the past, but they're 4 big ones to have out straight away. And a reminder, if you do have a trade boost left, you can have 4 trades potentially this week. We all get 3 every week through the buys, so that can help us out. Quick Fallen Primo watch, some guys with big break evens that we can try and maybe pick up, especially maybe in a couple of weeks' time. It's always tricky bringing someone in this week when they're about to have a bye. Everyone has a bye in the next few weeks. I think Zak Butters is the one that a lot of people will be watching. He's down to 585K. He's lost about 100,000 in the last, say, 3 weeks. And he's got another really high break even when he comes back. So obviously not playing this week with Port on the bye, but the game after he has a break even of 196. I think, I'm not sure if they play GWS that week or the next week with Toby Bedford potentially looming.
The week, his next game. So if he drops a 60 there, he's dropping a lot of cash. So I think that's a big watch. He's
one that, a lot of people will try and get in to their teams maybe after, and that'll be buy free as well. So it just lines up perfectly. Some other interesting names there, but one that I spotted too that could be helpful to us maybe later in the year. Sam Darcy's now listed on the Bulldogs injury list as 1 to 4 weeks, which is bit mysterious, but if he does come back in the next few, he's got a break even of 193 after obviously doing that knee injury quite early in the game. His last match, and he's 497K, so he could lose a bit of money off that. And maybe, if we're scratching around for upgrades later in the year and we can't all afford the top priced guys, with cash being a bit of an issue this year, he's someone who could potentially help us out. But anyone else on that sort of break even list that jumps out at you, Dan?
Well, Jason Orfran's I have in my side. I'm considering trading him in this week to get in another premium potentially, but seeing his break even that high, it does make it a bit more tempting to potentially trade him and then get him back in potentially at 70K less. So that's definitely a watch. Lockie Whitfield, it's just the role thing scares me a bit. I was eyeing him off until he played, obviously. You revealed the numbers in SuperCoach Plus this week, and it's very concerning. So I probably want to wait another week, and he could drop a 160 even at half forward against Richmond. So that'll be one I'll be watching closely, I reckon.
The name that really jumps out for me on this list is Max Gawn. Because of the fact that he is still not in my team. So he's up to $731,000 and his break even is 164, which he can just get in his sleep, it seems. But hopefully one of these days he doesn't and I can pounce. But I have to figure out my long-term plan of how I'm going to get him in. But there's definitely a big Gawn-shaped hole in my side at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, jumping ahead, there's a couple of questions people are asking. Look, do I just have to forget all these other plans and just get Gawn because it's just hurting every week not having him? But as you say, his price is coming down, maybe not heaps, but hopefully a little bit. And I mean, where do you sit on this sort of, we've got the Bont, we've got Gawn, Butters is getting a bit cheaper, but, there's top end guys who are very, very expensive, but it is hard playing when you don't have them and you see other people have them, and especially Gawn's ownership is quite high. Do you think you just have to sort of break your team to get them, or is it more playing it smart and, like we saw the Phantom put out a 6-week plan who he's getting every week in the buys and trying to build your team that way?
Yeah, and I think he did a 6-week plan last year and then it was done after 1 week. So just hold your horses there, Phantom. No, we love his work. But, I think you got to pick your battles. I think I've followed, by and large, last year's winner's advice of just buying cheap guys. And I bought Shea Bolton in last week. He may not be an absolute keeper or might not be great, but 2 weeks before that, I'd brought in Cherry and he, dropped a 160 in his debut in my team. So, it depends. And obviously, like some were expecting Bont to go big and he could have gone massive against the Cats. He was looking like a 160 or 150 sort of score there at halftime, but obviously spent a bit more time forward and dropped the 107. So, it's an interesting debate, but I think with the lack of rookies at the moment, you're probably erring on the side of just waiting, especially if they have a high break even. Bont, he could easily get the 136 break even that he has. But guys like a Gawn, I think I'd probably be waiting. And just looking at his matchup this week, he's got Rowan Marshall, who is no easy beat either. So he should drop below 700. Darcy Cameron after that. Dante Visentini might be the one where you jump on. Even
Dante to Gawn?
Yeah, true. You could actually do that. But 177 in his last 2 games against Port, exactly. So, that might be the time, even though it's before his bye, it might be the time to do that. Potentially drops another 50K before he drops 170 again.
Yeah, that's true. The buys just get in the way of those trade plans though, don't they?
It is true.
Yeah, I think we're sort of heading maybe in a bit of 2 different tracks of where SuperCoach teams go from here, or maybe I'm on my own here, but I've sort of broken the bank the last couple of weeks and paid up for Gawn, then I paid up for Bont, and I've gained a fair bit in the rankings in the last couple of weeks, even though those guys haven't necessarily gone over the top, although Gawn was obviously good on the weekend. But what it means is, like, my bench is completely dead, basically. Like, I'm looking at how am I going to upgrade this week when I've got, a Huswaite or a Connor Stone's like my most expensive guy, where I'm looking at people who still have a Lindsay or Elijah Hewitt who you can actually, so is it the teams that are going to be able to fill out to get to 22, 23 premiums, even if some of those might be a bit cheaper, like a Shea Bolton, whereas I don't know who I'm going to have in those spots, but I've got the sort of the top end guys, hopefully sort of carrying everybody.
And it's where the buy is a bit of a blessing in disguise, right? Where, otherwise you might have been caught short, not upgrading your team every week. With the buys coming in, you only have to have 18 premiums or, thereabouts. So I think it works quite well, and you can sort of get these guys that might have going on good runs, like a Shea Bolton for a bit cheaper, maybe a Callum Mills when he does come back, to sort of, stop gap your team during the buys where you might not be hurt as much, and then hopefully coming out of the buys, you're able to sort of move these guys to and have all your Bonts, Nick Dacos's, all these sorts of players. So, yeah, it will be interesting tactical thing, especially when a lot of the best targets are usually coming into a buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the thing for me is, you can sort of cover, like I've got Cooper Simpson, he was my last forward on field. What do I do with that spot? But it doesn't really matter for the next few weeks because you're just getting your best 18 scorers, but I just have to make sure coming out of the buys, I've figured out what I'm doing in that position. Now, the next section, we usually have a short rookie roulette segment, but we'll make it expanded a bit this week because we've got Dan here. And there are a few rookies potentially on the bubble or around the mark this week. And then, of course, the mid-season draft might help us out as well. So we'll talk about who we might see there. But just quickly, Dan, straight off the top this week, there's, in terms of bubble boys, there's probably really only the one who's about to really change in price in Campbell Gray from the Tigers, 119K. Scored really well last week. The worry with him is he's really come in to cover for Noah Bolter, who won't play this week, but he will be back the week after. I don't think he misses too many more games with that sort of curfew issue that he had. So can we trust Gray, or do we just, have to back him in given there's not much else around? Then you've had, Angus Clark scored fantastic at his first game. There's a couple of others who've played a few games, but still are, gettable in terms of price. Who do you like straight off the bat this week in terms of the rookies?
Yeah, I'm looking at Campbell Gray. I was at that game as you were, Al, as Tigers nuffies we are, but I was really impressed by him. I had, 13 spoils against the Bombers. Also had 3 intercept marks and 6 intercepts for 82 points, and he was moved forward after three-quarter time as well. So that could have been a bigger score. I think, if they're choosing between Trainer and Gray this week or when Bolter comes back, at this rate, they're probably going with Gray. That's an opinion, not actual view. But I think Uza actually did say post game or during the week that they want to get him games because he is playing well in the VFL and averaging 91 SuperCoach points there. So I'm happy to pick him. He's depth forward as well, so that really does help. And he is nice and cheap. I wouldn't probably be going Angus Clark just yet. We've seen how every single player seems to spud it up in their third game. But, Angus Clark, he was playing saw some vision. I think it was on Channel 7 maybe, that he was playing a bit of the Ollie Dempsey role where he's playing on the wing and then moving forward.
Kingy loved that on the first crack.
Yeah.
So he was playing on the wing and somehow he's taken 2 contested marks in the goal square against Hugo Ralphsmith.
And I think, he'd weigh about as much as you, Al, to be honest, and he's managing to take big contested marks. So I was surprised, but he, as has been well documented, he's been chopping firewood, in his regional town in South Australia just to be able to get drafted in the first place. So he's definitely very determined and obviously got a little bit of strength that you don't see. But yeah, I think he's probably a good option for the week after. Maybe just give him another week. He could drop a 30 this week, with a rookie that size playing that sort of role. But I think at the same time, if you don't trust Gray, then, you could probably take the punt, but I probably would want to wait till the third week.
And a couple of debutants have been announced already this week. Leo Lombard at the Gold Coast, he's 167K mid. And Zach Johnson, another bomber. They just have to nearly play everybody on the list at the moment. He's 113K mid. At this time of year, sometimes you do crazy things, but you probably wouldn't want to pick either of them unseen. But do you think they could help us out?
I love Lombard. I think early on in the year, and I think even back end of last year, he was sort of one of the ones that I'm like, I want to see him play because not only just as a talented ball winner, but also as a SuperCoach option. he was just a ball magnet last year. He was he won the like medal, was the best player at the under-18 championships, and it may have gone higher if he wasn't tied to the Suns Academy. He averaged 66 points at a VFL level last year. He debuted as a 16-year-old back in the final series and was a premiership player for the Suns there in 2023, so that was pretty remarkable. You think he probably plays as a small forward, but maybe they do shake it up a bit and put him inside. He's certainly well developed. He's a tackling machine as well. So 167K, obviously you'd want to wait a couple of weeks, but he's one to watch. Zach Johnson also been going really well in the VFL as a half-back, I think Fantasy Freako was saying there. So he's averaging 104 Supercoach points in the VFL, as well as 26 touches, so winning plenty of it back there. So it was interesting to watch the role there. He was another really strong Supercoach scorer at under 18 level, averaged 125 points in the Coates Talent League, which a lot of sort of talent juniors do. It's not quite sample under 18 levels of you average 160 points and then go into the AFL and average 20. But I think he's another one to keep an eye on as well, and a lot cheaper, 113K as a midfielder. Yeah,
we just have to, you certainly wouldn't be going early on Essendon rookies, I think, given what we've seen from them
exactly
this year. We've been burnt a little bit, but there are a couple of other guys too. And speaking of the sample under 18 numbers, they come into play here too. Chloe, I know we were talking before we even came on air about, could you play a little bit more for some guys who are sort of in the 200K range, who've maybe played a few games, but potentially have a bit better job security or better scoring potential? So you're looking at guys like Kane McAuliffe, who did put up some massive numbers in the sample when he was over there before he got drafted, but he's come into the Richmond midfield, scored pretty well the last few weeks, 287K. Angus Sheldrick seems to be finally, maybe running out games a bit. He's played 2 full games without the sub-vest and scored in the 80s 2 weeks in a row. He's 237K. They both got sort of negative break-evens. Anyone there take your fancy? Chloe is maybe a bit more reliable. And another one that must admit I hadn't thought of even when I was watching him play last week, Isaac Keeler for the Saints played pretty well down in defence. I think his first game or couple of games he was sort of more a full forward type. So he's still only 138K after playing maybe 5 matches. But he's, after scoring 67, he could potentially be an option as well. Anyone else there that you like?
Yeah, I also hadn't really thought of Keeler, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad option if you're looking for a rookie who should most likely play. We've obviously been burnt by a few rookies so far already who have been dropped, but just with their tall stocks being a bit low at the moment, I would presume that he would stay in the side. But in terms of McAuliffe and Sheldrick, I'm kind of tossing up between the two myself this week. I would probably like to jump on one of them just because there is that sort of missing cash generation at the moment. I'll probably jump on McAuliffe. I do really like Sheldrick. I've actually been looking at getting him in for the past few weeks. Haven't quite been able to make it happen. But I guess the only thing to watch would be maybe potentially Tyler Sonsie comes back in, but the injuries are kind of in his favour at the moment. Obviously, Presti is returning, but we don't necessarily know how long that will last. So I don't know.
And Thompson Dow's out. We didn't mention him in the injury list. Not really a Supercoach relevant player, but he's out for 6-8 weeks or something as well, and he's been getting some decent midfield time, so that sort of maybe opens up.
Yeah, I think we were saying that McAuliffe was, or maybe it was on the lair, they were discussing that he was 3rd for CBAs this week. Not quite sure if he'll hold that with Prestia back, but he's been playing some good footy. So I don't know. I just feel like I would like to get him in my side. I don't really, when it comes to both of them, I don't think they're both good options, but I don't know. I just feel like I've seen some better things from him than I have from Sheldrick. So I think that I'll go with McAuliffe. Yeah,
Sheldrick's very stop-start, isn't he? Yeah. Like he can burst and score 50 in a quarter and then just doesn't do much for the rest of it. I've always loved Sheldrick since his junior days, is winning stacks of contested footy, and is a bit cheaper as well. But I think of the two, you're probably going McAuliffe. But I've picked so many sort of airy-fairy 200, 290K sort of guys. Ned Long did work well until I traded him out before he scored 130. But I think the role is definitely there in the midfield. The outs now just means that it should be prolonged. So I think that's a big tick, and Sonsie's pretty much the only competitor really. Whereas Angus Sheldrick, who knows what the Swan side sort of looks like in 4 weeks, whether Callum Mills goes in there. I think the job security and role is definitely better for McAuliffe.
Yep.
And the other one that, jumping forward, Jimmy has asked a question about, in similar sort of price, 290K. Is Shannon Neale a consideration? Negative break even.
Oh, it's
His
tempting.
next 3 games include West Coast this week and Essendon in 3 weeks, who basically don't have a back line. So key forwards, obviously, pretty volatile Supercoach picks, but as a close Geelong watcher, is he an option?
Yeah, I actually spoke to him post-game. The story will be coming out today, so keep an eye out for that. Obviously stepping out from Tom Hawkins' shadow a touch last week. But, yeah, I probably wouldn't be touching it, to be honest. Like, he's more of he does get some ruck time and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I'm not sure he could keep it up. I'd definitely be going Kane McAuliffe over him. Like, he's not there to rack up possessions. Like, he's working up and down the ground and that sort of thing and just creating a contest, really. So, yeah, I'd probably be passing up on Shannon Neale. But, he certainly, showed his potential the other week.
And, of course, tonight might save us all. The mid-season draft has been a bit hit and miss in the past. We've had some great Supercoach picks come out of it, and other years there's sort of not much. What's this year's looking like?
Well, I think overall clubs aren't too happy or not, don't absolutely love the pool, which is, I think in previous years you've had years where the whole draft's been impacted by COVID, and you get you guys like Jai Newcomb who are missed. Whereas this year, a lot of these guys are very overexposed. You're sort of more so getting the late developers. But I think Tom McCarthy could be a potential rookie saviour for us. We know West Coast has been willing to play their mid-season draftees pretty quickly. Obviously, Ryan Marrick, who's become a Supercoach sensation himself, played, I think, about 10 days after he was drafted. And obviously a fair trek from Gippsland over to West Coast. But Tom McCarthy from Richmond VFL is the absolute hot favourite, lock to be the number 1 pick. Rebounding defender, 24. He averaged 103 Supercoach points and 23 disposals so far this year. And I think in some games he was taking kick-ins and then going into the centre bounce as well. So we love that as Supercoaches. And obviously, I'm not sure he gets def mid. He played mostly defence. But that would be very handy if you got def mid as well. You can swing in with the likes of Connor Rosie, Harry Sheezel, those sort of guys. And who knows whether he could play right away. I think Tim Mitchell even tweeted about Ryan Marrick. Did they move him to the wing because McCarthy might be going half back? So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he does play. But I think he'd be a good chance of playing across the buys at least.
Yeah, 99K. We would think in Supercoach, which would be amazing. Just quickly, any other names to watch? Yeah,
I think Michael Selwood as well, WA rebounding defender, more of an interceptor. He averaged some big numbers in the waffle, 126 Supercoach points, 24 disposals, 10 intercepts and 4 intercept marks. Port Adelaide Carlton Bulldogs among his suitors. I think we'd be wanting maybe Port Adelaide or Carlton. Obviously, they played Logan Evans straight after he was picked in the mid-season draft. Bulldogs probably have too many sort of range defenders already for him to break in straight away. But you look at Carlton, you know better than most, Chloe. They need someone who can kick well, someone who can intercept, someone who can break the lines a bit as well, and he's the sort of player that can.
Matt Carroll not cutting the mustard?
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, I guess if we did pick him up, then maybe no more Matt Carroll stocks, but that might be a good way to cash him in. So.
Yeah.
And what about the Bombers, Dan? We know they've got injuries everywhere, especially in the ruck and in the back line. Are they a team who could play some guys quickly?
Yeah, potentially. Obviously, Goldie, he's sort of holding the fort at the moment, but they are looking, have been linked to some mature age rucks. Ollie Eastland, probably the most interesting one from a Supercoach perspective, averaging 138 points, 34 hitouts, 18 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 5 clearances this year in the waffle, and has had multiple seasons of averaging over 110. So I think he's one to watch. He's 199, so might not play. Might not be able to score that against the likes of Max Gawns and those sort of types, but very mobile, can go around the ground. So could play as that sort of ruck forward along with Goldie. Lockie Blackiston as well, 26. He's 203 centimetres, averaged 32 hitouts, 13 touches and 82 Supercoach points so far this season. And you'd think they'd probably look to a ruck with one of their selections, but they may also use some picks for some more developing guys as well. Another one to keep an eye out for from Port Melbourne is Jack Watkins. So he's 24. He trained with them as a supplemental during the supplemental selection period. Didn't get picked, but he's been going well in their sample side, averaging 30 disposals, 90 uncontested possessions, 7 score involvements, and 112 SuperCoach points. So, yeah, I think we're looking out for these mature age guys who can hopefully play early, and Port, they need some bolstering with some injuries and just obviously how they're going on field. So I think that they're sort of the main guys to watch out for on Wednesday night.
All right, well, keep an eye out as soon as I think we've got a preview online already, and once the order is, the picks are confirmed, we'll have all the numbers on all those guys. So click on the news tab on the SuperCoach app, and of course Code Sports as well. But we better get into the questions because there's plenty here this week, but we'll try and race through them. But big hot topic this week, Chloe, getting a few questions about this guy. Matt's asked, Harry Sheezel, do we hold? He's 516K now. He's got a break even of 168, obviously north on the bye. So people may be thinking this is a chance to get an extra player in who he can play this week. Where do we sit on him? I mean, he's been thrown all over the field this year. He went back to defence for a few weeks and was scoring hundreds and was looking great. And then whether Kane Corns had anything to do with it or not, he's been out of there last couple of weeks and sort of more midfield. And then last week was mainly forward, which is not what we want. But I mean, how do we predict what's going to happen between now and the rest of the year? If he plays forward for the rest of the year, I think getting off is the right move. But what's your intuition there?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think at the moment I'm not in a position where I could move him on. But if you don't have too many fires to put out in your side, I would say it's not necessarily the worst idea to do that. But yeah, it's just hard to know whether he could just pop back up in defence, after their bye. Don't really know what's going to happen there. But he has come out and said that he does prefer that sort of forward role for himself. So I guess maybe that's just a role that they're looking to have him in to the future and beyond. So if that's the case, potentially you're right, jumping off now could save any later headaches. So yeah, but at the moment I'm not able to do that. So what about you guys? Do you own Harry?
I've got bigger problems than Harry Sheezel. I'm going to hold and hope. I also have Caleb Daniel as well. So him moving also sort of helps Caleb Daniel a little bit. So my side, but obviously we probably prefer Harry. He probably has more upside in that role, but we saw him score so well in that role last year anyway. So yeah, I think it's worth persisting with him unless you have no problems in your team. And must be nice.
And I mean, the thing about him too is that he's dropped so much cash. It's not like you can trade him out to a primo and have 100K left over to go and spend somewhere else. It'd just be pretty much a straight swap. And I'm sort of looking at my trade count getting pretty low. If I use the maximum 3 trades over each week of the buys, I think that I'd be done. So can't really afford to spend a trade on that. But I mean, it could be one that pays off. I mean, Dan got a question from Moore asking, do you go away? You could bank some cash. He's going Sheezel down to Tom Stewart, who's I think 423K around that mark. I mean, anyone who's had Stewart this year, I think Dossie on the Lairs talked about it, and we had Lee Montagna on last week. He's had him. It's been pretty painful with him missing so many games, but when he's played, he's scored okay. Yeah. And that is very cheap for someone who we know can score well in SuperCoach. Could that pay off?
I think it could. At the moment, I do have him in my team. I like what I saw last week.
Is he a new addition to your team?
He is a new addition, yes. I didn't hold him all the way through. But I do like it. I've been jumping. I mean, if I justified jumping on Shea Bolton, I think Tom Stewart is a much more, solid option. Obviously, he's had the injury-affected games this year, hasn't been right. But we saw what he was able to do in the back half of last year as well. Obviously had the injury-affected score in the second last game or in the last game of last year, but, went on a run of 115, 105, 121, 139, 120, 76, 104. So that's a pretty good run. And I think he might not be able to replicate that, but if you can go close, if you can average 105 from 430K, it's a pretty good result.
That's a great result. And I mean, the other one that I'm looking at is Max Holmes, who's sort of 519. So he's virtually, sideways from Sheezel if you wanted to do that. Or maybe I'm going to try and get from Zach Reed potentially up to him. But it seems like the tags now, which Stewart did have a bit of an issue with that last year, early in the year, but they maybe more go to Max now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. Or even Bailey Smith, as they did, as Port Adelaide did. But you look at these next few matchups, West Coast, Gold Coast, Essendon. I mean, I don't really see tags coming for him in those few games. And, he could run riot. Max Holmes sort of does what he likes, switching from the midfield to defence. So, and obviously just with Tom Stewart as well, he's had that rest of games, not having that strapping on training, even noticing that. So, I think that both are pretty solid options, especially with their run home. They got Richmond twice in 6 weeks. They got North, they got West Coast. They're
a lot of home games.
They're going. They could downhill ski on the way home, I think. So,
what if you could only have one of those two? Who would you pick?
It's probably Holmes. Just he's got more upside, I think, and it's only an extra 90K.
Yeah.
But if you press for cash, there's probably Stewart.
What about talking about another sort of blast from the past in terms of SuperCoach star at a reasonable price? Jason asking, if I want an underpriced premium, do we bring Clayton Oliver back in at M8? He's 463K. So I think I've looked it up and he's gone up about 10K since the start of the year. But he has looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. Scored 130 last week. Seems to be in more of a happier space. Hopefully it's all going well for him. But could you consider that, Chloe? Did you trade him out when we all did?
Yes, I did trade him out. It would have been a good hold actually, or hopefully for the next couple of weeks. But it is that first score that he's gotten over 100 since round 2. So he definitely has looked better in terms of passing the eye test. But I don't know, if you were going to jump on, maybe now would be the time to jump back on, I suppose. But I've done enough jumping off and jumping back on. I had to bring Matt Flynn back in, so I don't think that I'll be doing that again after how that's worked out for me for the second time. So.
I did that, and I also brought in Elijah Sardis back for one game, and he hasn't played since.
I almost did that, so at least I avoided that one.
Don't hate it, but like you say, he's only had 2 tons for the year, but Melbourne looking a lot better certainly last week. If they get on a roll, might not be the craziest move. What about Connor? Dan says, who's a better pick between Dacos or Merritt? So Nick Dacos is down to 536K, that's a fantastic price for him, although he's been a bit off the ball for a few weeks. Or Zach Merritt, 553K. They both have sort of break even just over the 100 mark, so I think that's probably about as cheap as they're going to get. I'm
looking at potentially bringing in both this week. I could go Stewart
and Stewart.
Not Stewart as well. So it's either those two. But I think I'll probably end up just getting maybe Stewart this week, hold the cash, and then use that extra money to get someone coming off the bye the week after. But I of the two, I'd probably be going Dacos, just seeing his second half the other week. Finn McGuinness is a little bit of a concern, but I don't think the Hawks have really tagged this year at all. So I'd be pretty confident locking in Dacos, at 536K. Got Melbourne and St Kilda the weeks after. Maybe he gets a Windhager tag. But I think he's a pretty good option. Merritt's also quite a good option. So just whoever you prefer, really, it's pretty close to splitting hairs.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Dacos is, at the end of the year, you look at your team, you think, I'd love to have Bond, Butters, Dacos, whether we get there, but Dacos is one who is gettable at that price. So those, we know what Merritt can do. We saw it last week, but he's been a bit more up and down than we usually see from him.
Exactly.
Chloe, Michael asking thoughts on trading Ryan Marich. So saying his matchups this week coming up aren't great for that sort of defensive role. And last week, as we talked about, he wasn't even in defence for a bit of the game after had a heap of clangers early, which really killed his score. And then he was up on the wing later on. And he's got a massive break even this week, about 154 in fact. So all that cash, he might start to go backwards a bit, but is he someone we should be thinking about trading?
For me personally, I'm hoping that was a bit of an anomaly game on the weekend. So hoping that he returns to the back line, but obviously with the mid-season draft, potentially maybe he won't, but I guess it'll be one to keep a watch on. I'm hoping that obviously there are those harder matchups coming up and he was scoring really well. I remember when you were picking captains and he finally made it into the top 3 captains picks because of his favourable matchups. So those favourable matchups in terms of defenders probably aren't coming for him, but hopefully, I think it was just those early clangers really that really set him up for failure on the weekend. I'm not thinking that we'll see such low scores from him again. I think maybe if you weren't someone who jumped off Caleb Daniel and you didn't want to jump off Caleb Daniel, maybe then you could move him on. But I did jump off Caleb Daniel, so I'm not really looking to jump off another forward. Some people might have him in their midfield, but he'll be sticking around in my team for a little while longer, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's my, they crunched all the numbers and in the end I've ended up in a similar position with you, is just hoping that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Not a lot of science sort of behind that. But I think, the position change obviously didn't really help him, but early in the game he was playing in defence. He took plenty of kick-ins, but just all those clangers, and because the game wasn't close, it's just really hard to catch those points up when you end up behind like that. Jason wants a verdict on him. Do I throw in the towel or keep going? No, definitely keep going. Jason, yeah, it's a tricky time of year, but it can be a time when you can actually catch up. There'll be people who haven't really prepared for the buys. And yeah, we talked about it in here about using the buys look at it as a sort of 5-week block. Now, even if this week's a bit tough, you might have a couple of better weeks where you've got more players available. And yeah, if we can find some of these cheaper guys who can score well at this time of year, could actually really help you out. Gary asking, is it more of a priority to trade Marich, we just talked about, or Bailey Humphrey? So early in the year, we had the option of, who do we pick between these guys to trade them in? And yeah, I think Marich's clearly won that one. But if you did have Humphrey, he's actually made 137K. So it hasn't been a total disaster. But would you be wanting to move him on now? His break-even's up over 100 as well after only scoring 34 last week.
This is a bit triggering for me because I traded out Humphrey before he dropped that 150 the week before.
I think there was a lot of people that did that, if that makes you feel any better.
Yeah, so seeing it 408K, I think I got rid of him about 310. So made about maybe 40K. So that does hurt. It's a good question. Who would you trade out of the two? I think probably Marich's probably the one who can sustain that scoring with his obviously all the kick-ins and that sort of thing. Obviously a little bit of a watch on the roll. But I'm not sure what Humphrey did score last week. But yeah, I'd probably be
34.
Yeah, I'd probably be trading Humphrey first, to be honest.
It's just so volatile. Like he could pop that 150 at any time, but apart from that, yeah, you're getting sort of lower scores. Hopefully, like we talk about, Marich's matchups aren't great for the next few weeks, but hopefully he can still give us sort of 80s, which isn't too bad. Chloe, Brennan asking, is Toby Green a legitimate option? 370K, obviously a forward, but he is getting a bit of midfield time this year. I did check his numbers before those DPP changes, and he wasn't quite in that territory, but he's sort of getting 25% maybe CBAs, which helps him out a little bit. He does play Richmond this week, and he scored 154 against us last time. They played last year, but he is only averaging 85 for the year. So again, he's sort of hot and cold, but the forward line's become a bit trickier than it looked a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what your purpose would be of bringing him in, whether you think he would be a viable option to have in your finish team. Unless you were supposedly moving down to flex, I don't necessarily think he would be someone that you'd want in your finish forward line. He'll probably spike against Richmond, and his break-even's 21, so he'll make a little bit of money, but they do eventually have players returning. I think Callie's due back this week, and then Callahan, obviously, not quite sure when, but between 3 to 5. So, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that I would lock him in just because there might be some other options that are either you could just pay up a little bit more and get someone a bit more decent with a bit better security and say like a centre bounce role, or potentially a Shannon Neale who could really go to some great heights if he kicks a bag, or you could just drop down, pay a little bit less and get one of those McAuliffe or Sheldrick types. So personally, I probably wouldn't. I can see why you might want to, but it might be 1 week where you regret it, and then if you don't do it, you might regret it. But then I think the following weeks you'd be pretty happy if you gave him a miss.
A few weeks' time, at the end of the buys, when we're running really low on trades, these are the kind of guys we might be looking at for that flex spot to just sort of finish the team off, but you're probably not going there just yet. I can quickly answer this one. Basil asked, is Naz a top 6 defender? And I'll say yes. I mean, he's number 5 at the moment, and yeah, I don't see that changing. He's been fantastic. Just had that one poor game, which is, of course, when Tim traded him in. Yeah. He seems to cop this every single time. But I really love Naz. So, and he's, I think, 515K now, so that's a really good price as well.
I wish he had the buy next week.
Yeah.
But it's obviously
he's got it, the week after.
Yeah, the week 13. After. Yeah, I'll probably look to get him after his buy. But yeah, probably still be around that 530K mark. So, yeah, a really good option there. Yeah, he's a good one to look at potentially, sort of finishing off your defence.
Question, I'm going to send this straight to you, Dan. Scott asking, was Mitch Knevitt a hologram?
Did he not actually exist? I probably pumped him up a little bit too much in hindsight, but he was carrying the plantar fascia for his last sort of few games, and then he was out of the side. Was back in the VFL, and at halftime he had 0 touches. You're thinking, what's going on? He actually only played the second half. So he came back. He's going to play some increased minutes, I think, the next week. So this week in the VFL, and then might come into the frame. But obviously the Cats are looking pretty good. Their midfield at the minute. So, yeah, you're probably going to have to bang the door down to get back in. But, yeah, obviously we saw in his first game with the 10 tackles, he does have that potential. But, yeah, if you're looking to get someone off, and it's between like a Clay Hall and him, and Clay Hall's getting emergency every week, then you're probably trading Knevitt. at this rate.
He's not going to be the Sean Manor of this year and just do nothing until round 17 and then come in and dominate.
The Cats have a habit of that. So, yeah, maybe that does happen, but I don't know. Not sure he has the runs on the board that Manor does.
Yeah, fair enough. We better wrap up quickly here, but Zoe, a question from Freo Tragic. Thoughts on Zach Reid to Jai Caldwell with some DPP magic? So Caldwell has been injured for a lot of this year. He had a couple of pretty low scores, but then went bang against the Tigers last week. So maybe take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But he's very cheap. So yeah, we're looking at maybe a Tom Stewart option. I think Caldwell's around a similar price, obviously in the midfield. Is that somewhere we could go to try and save money?
Yeah, potentially. Talking on that Toby Green dilemma earlier. He's someone who you could potentially get now and then move into your flex, get him now while he's still cheap and then maybe move him into your flex later. He does have that high scoring potential that we saw last year, but he has averaged 109 in his 12 games with 60% or more centre bounces from 24 to 25. This year he's at a career high 64% CBAs for the season. Obviously hasn't appeared too many times with that injury, but that's still a pretty good number to consider.
He had a pretty big jump. He was around the 50s and then last week it was more like 80%. So yeah,
I think that was his biggest.
That keeps going.
His most CBAs, and it was his highest points per minute game, 1.31 points per minute, and that was coming off the interrupted preseason and then the hamstring. So back to his highest time on ground as well since that hamstring. So he could be on that upward trajectory, and if he jumped on now, could reap the rewards later. So I would definitely say it's a good option, but don't know if Dossie would like us plugging that too much because I know that he's got his eye on him. So
yeah, no, I didn't realise some of those stats actually are pretty good. Maybe you want to see one more game out of him. But so I missed the Caldwell train last year, and it's still bringing his name up again is a bit triggering, as we said before.
This is another question from someone called Pat. Is that right?
What do you think, Dan? Have you got some expertise in this area?
Yeah, so he said, hi, just wondering if I should have paella for dinner tonight. I think that's how you pronounce it. Or go with some smaller share plates, a bit of tapas. Please advise. I have been in Barcelona before, so I'd probably I'd go to the paella. It's always very good. Actually had some at Adelaide Oval would gather around as well, which was
They've got good food at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, so Patch has gone all the way to Barcelona and he could have just
gone to Adelaide Oval.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're following Patch on the socials, he's posting some pictures from looks very nice over there in Spain.
Potatoes Bravas maybe.
Yeah.
Keep watching Patch. Glad to have you still tuning in over there. Thanks Dan for jumping on. Thanks Chloe. Thanks everybody for watching. Dan, we'll be keeping a very close eye, as I said, on the mid-season draft tonight. So I'll be hitting you up.
Please give us something
later tonight for all those numbers. So keep an eye out for those. Until then, everybody, good luck with your trades, and we'll talk again soon.